Now, shall we begin?
And hello everybody and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host Christian. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this week. Of course, this is the Movie Pit where we talk about all the latest breaking movie news that has come out throughout the week. We also talk about all the movie trailers that have come out. We'll also talk about the movies that are coming out at the theater this weekend for all your viewing pleasures, and of course everything in between that is movie related. This week is no different. Obviously, we're going to be talking about some big movie news items that came out this week. We'll also be talking about some big trailers that dropped this week, and oh boy, do we have some big trailers that dropped this week. And of course, we'll be talking about pretty much the only movie coming out this weekend, but we'll get to that, of course, when we get to it. So let's start right off. We're going to start off, as we always do here on the podcast, talking about trailers. So this is, of course, our segment of Trailer Talk.
Coming soon to theaters.
First trailer we're going to talk about is the first trailer for the new Steven Soderbergh horror film called Unsane. This is by Bleecker Street. They released the trailer this week, and the movie, Steven Soderbergh, who has directed all the Ocean's 11 movies, he directed Logan Lucky last year, he shot this entire movie on an iPhone, which is insanely impressive. The film follows a woman played by Claire Foy in the movie. She is from Netflix's The Crown, if any of you have watched that or don't know who she is, who is convinced that she sees her stalker everywhere and inadvertently admits herself into a psych ward. However, as she continues to see him, she starts to question whether he's really there or if she truly is insane. I'll admit the footage of the trailer is really jarring. Obviously, if you ever filmed anything off your iPhone, you will recognize how it looks and how it looks in the trailer itself. It is a bit jarring. However, the synopsis of the movie and just how it feels when you're watching the trailer, just the footage itself, it kind of fits the theme and kind of fits what's going on. There's a lot of a close-up shots and everything just feels really, so it is very jarring how he ended up how Soderbergh films this, but again, it makes some sense when you realize what the movie's about. So it is a bit jarring, but hey, it's Soderbergh, and anything Soderbergh does, he does for a very good reason, and it usually, for the most part, always pays off. So if he wants to film an entire movie off an iPhone, have at it, and he'll probably make it an awesome experience. Now, Soderbergh, of course, again, saying that the movie was shot entirely on iPhone, first of all, very impressive, but Soderbergh is not the first person to shoot an entire movie off an iPhone. Of course, there was Sean Baker, who directed Tangerine back in 2015, who shot that whole movie on an iPhone. Of course, Sean Baker went on to direct the Florida Project, where he shot some parts of that movie on an iPhone, but he used the more traditional methods to film that movie afterwards. But he shot Tangerine on iPhone. Even Park Chan-wook, who directed the classic Old Boy, he also directed The Handmaiden a couple years ago. He shot a short film called Night Fishing entirely on an iPhone, and that short film, by the way, is up online. I'll put a link to that down below in the description/show notes area in case any of you want to watch it. But so it has been done before. People have shot movies, whether feature length or short movies, on an iPhone that have been put out. But what I'm trying to say is people who within the industry have shot movies on an iPhone that have been released to the public. So this is pretty cool. But this is, I think, again, the footage itself is very jarring, but it makes sense, and I think this could be really cool. I don't know if we're gonna start seeing a trend of professional directors shooting movies on iPhones. I think if I remember correctly, Joss Whedon shot one little scene in the Avengers on an iPhone as well. But it's not every day that we get these professional directors, especially a big name director like Steven Soderbergh, shooting a whole movie on an iPhone. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, the iPhone footage, it's not very good for whatever reason. You can shoot movies on iPhones. The problem is, sound, and you can't move it around too much because, it's so sensitive when you move stuff around. So we'll see how this turns out. But again, considering the synopsis of the movie, the theme of the movie, I think it makes a lot of sense that he would shoot it off that, and I think it's very impressive and very ambitious for Steven Soderbergh to do this. So, Unsane does come out later this year. We don't have to wait too long. Unsane comes out on March 23rd. So obviously we'll talk more about that once we get closer to the release date for sure. But I highly recommend you go check out the trailer. Alright, so let's move on to our second trailer. Another horror film by A24 this time. A24 has been killing it in the theatrical releases, so I can only imagine this one will continue the trend. This trailer is for Hereditary. It stars Toni Collette as a woman who deals with the recent death of her mother when strange and cryptic occurrences turn that grief into nightmares and reveal a horrifying truth about her ancestry. Or their ancestry, I should say. So first of all, when you watch the trailer, I watched this trailer, and my immediate first reaction was, what the fuck did I just watch? Which says a lot when you're watching this trailer. It just has this really weird. First of all, it doesn't. There's some nice little editing tricks that they do, some nice framing devices they do at the beginning of the trailer, because it shows. The first shot of the trailer is this dollhouse as it opens up, and it kind of just kind of zooms in, and you start seeing the actions of these characters. You see someone say, "Hey, wake up! Here's your outfit, or here's your suit," and then we cut immediately to a funeral scene that immediately kind of just like the camera just pans down, and it goes into the ground, and all of a sudden we just get the real story of what's going on. We see Toni Collette's character, we meet her family, and it's this slow build up to the trailer that it just goes off the rails immediately. There's some very, very I want to say cool, but I also want to say interesting and weird and kind of fucked up imagery. That it's just one of those trailers that's like you immediately say, what the fuck did I just watch? But at the same time go, I'm really interested in that, and I really want to know what's going on. So, Hereditary. First of all, Hereditary has been getting a lot of buzz since it debuted at the Sundance Film Festival, and in the trailer itself, you get all these little blurbs from these different places. I think one of them even said that it's kind of the new Exorcist, where it just kind of gets under your skin, and just the trailer alone was one of those trailers that kind of stuck with me after I watched it. And it was just, it rarely happens nowadays, especially for a horror movie. Because a horror movie, you kind of expect what to see in a horror movie, trailer. You expect to see some pop-ups, some jump scares. You expect to see kind of these weird imagery kind of things. This one, though, there's no jump scares or anything like that. It's all like psychological. And it's just one of those things that it's really great. And A24, they say, the producers of Split and The Witch, which were two movies, obviously two very different movies, but this does kind of co-align a little bit with The Witch. I think it's going to be one of those movies that kind of just plays with you on a psychological level, not necessarily there's something popping out at you kind of thing. So, Hereditary just immediately jumped to my must-watch list after watching this trailer. So, Hereditary does open later this year. It opens at a prime summer spot on June 8th this year. So we'll obviously be talking more about that as we get closer to the release date for sure. Before we get to the big trailer of the week, there are other two little trailers that came out. A new trailer for Game Night came out. That's the Jason Bateman, Rachel McAdams movie, where they play a couple where their game night, as the title suggests, gets a little out of hand. So this is the second trailer. First trailer came out not last year, and this new trailer just dropped this week, and it looks pretty funny. It still looks pretty funny. I'm a huge fan of course, Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams. You got Kyle Chandler in there. You got a bunch of other people in there as well, obviously, but it looks pretty good. Still looks pretty funny. But also there was a teaser for The Purge. The new Purge movie is called The First Purge, and as you expect, it is actually a prequel. It's taking us back to the very first Purge, and from what I saw it online, obviously, but apparently, if I remember this correctly, apparently the teaser popped up during the State of the Union address, which I find very funny after the fact. So there's nothing really story-wise. It's kind of like this mock trailer about patriotism, and it's very patriotic, and then all of a sudden at the end there's that twist. So it's essentially what the Purge has been doing lately with their teasers. So the first Purge teaser is out. It's very short, it's like 30 seconds long. So again, there's no real story, there's no footage or anything. It's just a very mock kind of patriotic teaser. And finally, the big trailer of the week. Probably, again, if I structure this just all movie news, this would be one of the biggest movie news items of the week. But we're in trailer talk right now, so this is one of the big trailers of the week and one of the biggest news items of the week for sure. It is the first trailer to Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I just have one question. When Cap needed help, if I'd asked you, would you have come?
I guess we'll never know. But if you had, you'd have never been caught.
I do some dumb things, and the people I love the most, they pay the price.
Thanks to you, we had to run. We're still running.
Let's go.
The movie synopsis reads like this. Scott Lang grapples with the consequences of his choices as both a superhero and a father as he struggles to rebalance his home life with his responsibilities as Ant-Man. He's confronted by Hope Van Dam and Dr. Hank Pym. With an urgent new mission, Scott must once again put the suit and learn to fight alongside the Wasp as the team works together to uncover secrets from the past. Now, there was some news tidbits that come out, obviously, before production began, and as production was going on, that we will be going back to the Quantum Zone, which is we briefly were introduced to in the first Ant-Man movie. And we'll be probably going back in there. Don't want to spoil anything, just in case I don't spoil it in the trailers, just in case you don't know anything. But we'll be going back there for a particular something. So there is that. But the trailer itself is an absolute blast. I had so much fun watching this trailer. I watched it like 3 times in a row after it came out, and I watched it again before I started recording this podcast. It is it's just so much fun. It's a hell of a lot of fun. They're keeping the same humor from the first movie, and they're kind of just opening it up just a little bit. We do see these little snippets of Civil War that happened. And the trailer immediately that's the beginning of the trailer. The whole trailer, the beginning is snippets from Civil War, and we get to see that kind of, where was Wasp during all this? And the first immediate thing is, Scott asking Hope, if I had asked for your help, would you have helped us? And of course, she being Hope, and we kind of knew the character. We kind of know what the character is like now a little bit from the first Ant-Man. She's like, well, if I was there, you never would have been caught. So that was kind of cool. So the whole, we don't get a lot of story from the trailer. The trailer is really just showing off the action, showing off a lot of the new technology we'll see in the movie. I'm pretty sure Pez dispensers are going to go up in sales now because of that little tidbit at the end of the trailer. We get to see Giant Man again in the trailer. We get to see Ghost. We get a little appearance of Ghost, which is originally in the comics an Iron Man character or Iron Man villain, and it seems like they're transforming the character into. They're keeping a little bit of the character, what the character was background. The character background a little bit from the comics, but now they're kind of upgrading the character a little bit. And originally the character was played by a man in the comics. This time it's played by a woman, Hannah John Kamen from Sci-Fi's Killjoys. She was on a couple episodes also of Black Mirror if you want to go check out her work. And she's great in Killjoys, by the way. But we get a little glimpse of her. We also get to see Lawrence Fishburne in there as well. He just has a little scene. But again, we don't get a lot of story. We do get a lot of action. We do get to see the awesome Wasp action, especially the tidbit with the knives. I thought was really cool. It's just a fun trailer. I think it's just a blast. I'm pretty sure we'll get another trailer as we get closer to the release date. The movie comes out on July 6th. Pretty sure we'll probably get a trailer before then, another trailer before then. But I love this trailer. I thought this trailer was great. I think it's going to be Ant-Man and the Wasp in general. I think it's going to be a successful, very successful movie for Marvel. So I can't wait for it. I can't really say too much. I mean, I loved it. So go check it out if you haven't already. And that's it for trailer talk. Let's move on, of course, to the big chunk of what this podcast is, the movie news. Alright, so as always, we're going to start off with some of the quicker news items that we can speed right through. Tom Hanks, everyone's lovable actor in Hollywood, is going to play Mr. Rogers. That's right, Tom Hanks is playing Mr. Rogers in the biopic You Are My Friend. So the movie will be directed by Marielle Heller, who directed Diary of a Teenage Girl. The biopic is inspired by the real-life friendship between Fred Rogers and award-winning journalist Tom Junod, I think that's how you say his name. In the story, the cynical journalist begrudgingly accepts an assignment to write a profile piece on the beloved icon and finds his perspective on life transformed. Hanks is pretty much kind of known now for playing people who were real. He's playing Ben Bradley on, or in The Post, I should say, not on The Post, in The Post. He's played Walt Disney in Saving Mr. Banks. I'm pretty sure he's played another real life person. I can't remember who now. I had someone in my head, can't think of it now. But yeah, Tom Hanks is adding another real Captain Phillips. That was the other person I was talking about. And Sully. Oh my God! Now I'm just getting all of them in my head. So he's played real life people before. Why not add one of the most lovable, one of the most well-known people in the world in Mr. Rogers? Why not? Let's just add that to the list. So it's great. So this is kind of cool. So the movie aims to start production later this fall. Tom Hanks will be busy filming another movie called Greyhound, which he actually wrote and will star in. That's pretty cool. That also aims to start this year. But like I mentioned, You Are My Friend aims to start production later this year in the fall. So I'll keep you guys updated on that once we get more news. Moving on to the next movie news item, Sam Raimi is in talks to direct the Kingkiller Chronicle. Sam Raimi is eyeing his first feature film since Oz the Great and Powerful. That's right, Sam Raimi has not directed a movie since Oz the Great and Powerful, which was 4 or 5 years ago? Something like that. Variety reports that Raimi is in negotiations to direct the adaptation of Pat Rothfuss, I think that's how you say his name. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Book series, The Kingkiller Chronicle. Lionsgate started the project back in 2016 when they nabbed Lin-Manuel Miranda, yes, that one of Hamilton fame, to the series. He's going to serve as a creative producer and musical head, as he will compose original music and songs for the franchise. Apparently, Lin-Manuel Miranda is a huge fan of the Kingkiller Chronicle. However, this will not be your typical adaptation. Lionsgate plans to have both a movie series, of course they want this movie to be successful, to start an own franchise, and they also want a TV series. So pretty ambitious. Pretty sure The Dark Tower will tell you to don't count your chickens before you hatch, because that was their plan for a long time, and obviously that did not work out. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the Kingkiller Chronicle, I am unfamiliar. I've never read it or even heard about it before the movie was being produced. The story follows an adventurer and musician who frames the story in the present as a rural innkeeper who lives anonymously. He tells his tale that spans multiple time periods and settings. And Lionsgate intends to adapt the first book, The Name of the Wind, with, of course, future installments coming in later throughout the years. Now, Raimi is eyed to direct 2 other projects at the moment, a horror movie called Bermuda Triangle and a sci-fi action film called World War III. But Variety notes that the Kingkiller Chronicle would be Raimi's next film. So those movies we put on the back burner, and this would be his next film that he signs on. Of course, if he signs on, Raimi will will direct the project. Now, Raimi has been keeping himself busy behind the scenes on a bunch of projects. He's serving as an executive producer on Ash vs. the Evil Dead on Starz, which actually starts its new season fairly soon. He's also been a producer on films like the Evil Dead remake, Don't Breathe, and a short film that I think he also directed not too long ago. But it's be very, very cool to see Sam Raimi back in the picture, because it's been a while since we have the Sam Raimi touch on the big screen. I think he deserves to come back. I know he's been searching for his new project. He was supposed to direct Warcraft that came out a couple years ago, but creative differences pulled him away. And of course, that movie came out with another director and it didn't turn out so well. But still he's been around, and I think it's time we get Sam. Like I mentioned, I think it's time we get Sam Raimi back on the big screen. So this could be it. Emily Blunt has joined Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on Disney's Jungle Cruise. Disney's live-action movie based off their Disney World ride of the same name has found its leading lady in Emily Blunt. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has been attached for the project for a while now, and Jaime Collet-Serra, who directed The Shallows and The Commuter that came out earlier this year, joined to direct the movie last year. It's said the movie will be inspired by The African Queen, starring Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn, which was set during World War I, and followed a riverboat captain who was persuaded by a missionary to use the boat to attack an enemy warship. However, the ride itself is actually a guided tour through the rivers of the world. So how they'll blend those two together is unknown at the moment, but you got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you got Jaime Collet-Serra, and you got Emily Blunt. That's a pretty cool trio to bank your movie on, so I'm okay with that. Blunt's casting actually comes from Disney itself, who are apparently very happy with what they've seen so far from Blunt in Mary Poppins Returns, which is set to come out later this year, in December. And they wanted her back somehow, and apparently this was the way that they got her back. This would also be Emily Blunt's third film with the studio in a very short time, actually. She was in Into the Woods that came out 4 years ago, something like that. And she, of course, again, she will be playing Mary Poppins Returns, which again comes out later this year. And now she will be in Jungle Cruise, which may come out next year, maybe 2019, next year's 2019. So maybe 2019, maybe 2020. There's no set release date for it yet, but they do plan on starting production in May of this year. So it is very conceivable they can be releasing the movie next year. So Emily Blunt has become kind of Disney's go-to, which is fine. I love seeing Emily Blunt on the big screen, whatever role she plays, because she's an amazing actress. So there you go. Alright, so let's move on to the next movie news item, which is the Men in Black reboot is eyeing F. Gary Gray. So Sony Pictures is moving forward with their Men in Black reboot that they have been toying around with for the last handful of years. Not only that, reports say that F. Gary Gray, the director of Straight Outta Compton and The Fate of the Furious, is in negotiations to direct the movie that will be a relaunch of the franchise that of course starred Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. However, the movies will exist, or the movie, I should say, will exist. I assume that Sony probably wants movies, but the movie will exist in the already established universe, but will now have different characters, similar to what Jurassic World is doing, where it's essentially kind of this soft reboot, but it still takes place in the world of the movies that we already know. Sony, of course, had played around with the idea of crossing over the Men in Black series with the Jump Street series. Even got director James Bobin to direct the movie. Of course, movement on that idea went nowhere, and there was a lot of people that were like, why are they doing this? But obviously Sony has moved on, and they're now focusing on purely a Men in Black movie, which is probably the better move. Whether making another Men in Black movie is the smart move overall is another question entirely. But F. Gary Gray is on board to direct, or is probably going to be on board to direct. Moving on, the new Men in Black could start very soon, though, especially if they sign him on quickly, because Sony Pictures does have a release date for their Men in Black reboot, which is May 17th of next year. So that's going to be kind of interesting. And F. Gary Gray directing Men in Black movie also sounds very interesting. But again, do we need another Men in Black movie? I don't know. Alright, so let's move on to the next movie news item. The ambitious graphic novel adaptation of Cowboy Ninja Viking finds a director. So the ambitious adaptation of Image Comics graphic novel Cowboy Ninja Viking is back on the movie news cycle. It's been quite a while since we reported on anything about this movie. It was announced a couple years ago. Universal Pictures will be handling the project, and Chris Pratt, yes, Star-Lord himself, is attached to play the lead character. But everything, again, has been pretty silent up until now. News broke this week that acclaimed director Michelle McLaren will be making her feature film directorial debut as she is signed on to direct the movie. Now, McLaren has made a name for herself in the TV realm, having directed great episodes on hit shows like The Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, Westworld, and Game of Thrones. She even directed the pilot and season finale of HBO's The Deuce, the James Franco show, which I believe she was also an executive producer on. And she was also very close, this close, to directing Wonder Woman. However, McLaren left over creative differences, and of course that opened the door for Patty Jenkins to come in and direct. Now, for those unfamiliar with the graphic novel, it revolves around an assassin named Duncan, who Chris Pratt will play, who possesses the skills of 3 of the title personas: a cowboy, a ninja, and a Viking, after an experiment. However, after the experiment program is shut down, Duncan is hired to track down the rogue experimentees. The original script was written by Paul Wernick and Reed Reese, who of course wrote Zombieland and Deadpool. But since then, their script has gotten a rewrite. Universal does have a release date for the movie. However, it's unknown if they will stick to that release date, considering how busy Chris Pratt is. Cowboy Ninja Viking currently has a release date of June 28th next year. Again, Chris Pratt's very busy schedule, and the fact that they just got a director could be a little upsetting. Maybe they'll probably move their release date. If they don't, I'll be very surprised. But you never know. So, like I mentioned, this is a project that's been in the works for a while. I remember talking about this when it first came out, and I was kind of excited for it when it first came out. I was still excited for it. I'm also very excited at the prospect of Michelle McLaren directing this movie, because it's kind of cool. And the fact that she was almost going to direct Wonder Woman kind of makes this very more interesting. So there you go on that. That's kind of interesting. So let's move on from one comic book movie news item to not really necessarily another one, but it is somewhat related. Kevin Feige, of course, the president of Marvel Studios, briefly talked about the Disney-Fox deal. Now, of course, the Disney-Fox deal sent shockwaves through all of Hollywood and hit fans hard. But, of course, the only thing that fans could really care about the deal is that Marvel would be getting the characters of Fantastic Four and X-Men. Which is fine, but, I think it would have been better if they would pay attention to all the other details of the deal. But whatever. That being said, the deal is not official just yet. The government still has to look over the deal and make it final. That said, at the premiere of Black Panther, which happened the other day, Feige being on the purple carpet, because they had a purple carpet, of course they did, the question was asked, and Feige didn't go all into it. I mean, he pretty much gave an answer that we all probably would have suspected he would give. So when he was asked about the deal, Feige said this, saying, quote, "These are big deals, and certainly above my pay grade." But then he went on and said something that maybe would have bummed fans out, especially if they don't know all the details of the deal, saying, quote, "The truth of the matter, as I understand it, is the deal has to be figured out. There's been no communications. We're not thinking about it. We're focusing on everything we've already announced. If and when the deal actually happens, we'll start to think about it more. Until then, we have a lot to do." Now, the already announced movies, as he mentioned, go all the way through 2019. So that being said, don't expect any Fantastic Four or X-Men characters to appear in a Marvel movie until probably after that. So until after 2019, maybe sometime in 2020. So like I mentioned, I think a lot of people were just blinded by the fact that, Marvel would now finally get to use the X-Men and the Fantastic Four characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which some fans have wanted for a long time. But they forgot the fact that a deal this massive just can't be done overnight. It has to be, looked over and everything, especially considering the fact that these are two massive studios in Disney and Fox. So we're not gonna, the deal, if everything works out smoothly, the deal will be official some early next year or something to that effect. Yeah, early next year. I think like February or March or something like that. I think they said. So we're not going to get anything at all. We're not going to get any teases. We're not going to get any sort of massive introduction to any characters like that. And I think that's what fans were expecting. I think some fans were even like, oh, they're going to add in something at the end of Infinity War, or they're going to add in something at the end of Avengers 4. No, they won't, because officially they still don't have the characters. And if they did that, which I highly doubt Kevin Feige would even do, it would be a massive letdown, especially if the deal doesn't go through. And then all of the fans will be like, this is bullshit, whatever. So, settle down. I think this is probably the proper response that Kevin Feige could have done. And he said he's not going to talk about it anymore, so stop bugging him. Alright, there you go. Just wanted to mention that because I know that was a pretty big little tidbit, a big little tidbit of a news item, considering, all the other nerd news that we got going on. So let's move on from that to the Super Bowl. No, I'm not going to talk about sports. This is still a movie podcast. But since it is the Super Bowl, or it's Super Bowl weekend, and Super Bowl's on Sunday, we always get first looks at some big movies that are coming out. And they're usually about 30 to 60 seconds long, which is fine. But it's enough to hold over fans for a full-length trailer that usually comes out a little bit later. So what's going to play? Well, according to the Hollywood Reporter, they have some pretty cool tidbits. So we'll get our first look at Mission Impossible Fallout. Yes, that is the name of the movie. They will debut their first footage. The new Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson action thriller Skyscraper, which we've talked about briefly on the podcast in the past, that will debut first footage. Universal Pictures have a rare 90-second spot to showcase Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It should be noted that the game is on NBC, which is owned by Comcast, and Comcast and Universal are part of the same family, which is probably why they got the longer TV spot, which is fine. Hollywood Reporter also expects that Disney will have a presence, either one last big push for Black Panther, because Black Panther will come out that Friday afterwards, or 2 Fridays from now. A Wrinkle in Time could possibly get something, and Avengers Infinity War could potentially also get something. They could also suggest that maybe something from Pixar, like The Incredibles 2, will also pop up. The outlet says that Netflix can also bring something to their to the table. We haven't talked about this on the podcast, but Netflix was in talks to buy the rights to the next Cloverfield movie. Now, if you remember, the next Cloverfield movie was supposed to come out in theaters. It was supposed to come out this month, but they pushed it back to, I believe they pushed it back to April. And then recently there was talks about, like I mentioned, there was talks about Netflix buying the third Cloverfield movie and putting it up on Netflix. And so it's a little wonky on that. If we do get a Cloverfield teaser with the Netflix banner during the Super Bowl, I think that will confirm the notion that the Netflix movie, or the Netflix movies, probably from this point forward, will be going on to Netflix. Who knows? But if you see anything that's called Cloverfield Station or God Particle or whatever, that is the Cloverfield movie, and that's going to be there. That's the suggestion. Hulu will also probably have a presence there, but most of the Hulu stuff is TV series, so we don't usually talk about TV here on the podcast. However, the big one is that we'll probably see the first look for the highly anticipated Star Wars spin-off Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, this is a movie that's been under a lot of people's microscopes since the movie's had a lot of behind-the-scenes troubles. Of course, one of them being that original directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller were fired with only a few weeks left in production. And Ron Howard came in to not only finish the movie, but also do extensive reshoots that basically maybe took away anything Phil Lord and Chris Miller did. Moreover, the movie comes out in May, and we haven't gotten any footage from the movie. None whatsoever. Which is very, very weird for a big movie like this. So, but of course, why did it wait so long? So apparently, according to the Hollywood Reporter, their sources, Lucasfilm and Disney wanted to wait until Star Wars The Force Awakens ended its theater run. Which seems, I don't know, but this is something similar they did with The Force Awakens and Rogue One. We didn't get any footage of Rogue One until after The Force Awakens was done in theaters, and then a little bit after that. However, the only difference between Rogue One and Solo, besides of course being two different movies, is that Rogue One came out in December. So there was enough time for them to be like, oh, you're not getting any footage because the movie doesn't come out until December. Solo comes out in May. There is a huge, massive difference between that. So, whatever the case, regardless of that, we'll get our first footage on Sunday. There's even talks about, or rumors, that we'll get a full official trailer that same week, later on in the week. There's also talks that maybe the first official trailer will also be attached to Black Panther, considering, of course, it's all part of the Disney family. So, we'll have to wait for confirmation on that, obviously, but hopefully we'll get to see some stuff on that. So obviously, these are just the confirmed ones, even the speculation ones, but the Super Bowl usually has some great TV spots, so we should hopefully get some good ones, and you'll know we'll talk about those trailers, those teasers, I should say, here on the podcast the following week, next week, for sure. All right, let's move on to what would have been our big news item of the week, but something else beat it out at the last minute. Nintendo and Illumination Entertainment strike a deal for a Mario movie.
It's me, Mario!
Now, back in November of last year, obviously, a few months ago, the report came out that Nintendo was in talks with Illumination Entertainment, the studio behind Despicable Me and Minions and The Secret Life of Pets and Sing, to do a movie about the cornerstone character of video games, Mario. At the time, it was just talks, but fast forward to now, we officially have word that Nintendo and Illumination have struck a deal to bring the plumber back to the big screen. The announcement was released through a tweet, which was, I believe there was like a press conference or like a conference call or something over in Japan, and then obviously that kind of trickled down to us. But the tweet saying that Nintendo and Illumination are partnering on a movie starring Mario, co-produced by Shigeru Miyamoto. If I mispronounce that name, I know I mispronounce it because I always mispronounce it, even though I always learn how to say it properly. I always mispronounce it. But Miyamoto and Chris Meledandri, I think that's how you say his name. He is the head of the owner of Illumination Entertainment. And of course, Miyamoto is the creator of Mario. So the movie will, thankfully, thank God, be a fully animated movie, obviously being done by Illumination Entertainment, as opposed to, of course, the horrible and infamously horrible, I know I said horrible twice, but it just has to be said twice, 1993 live-action movie and box office flop, Super Mario Bros., that of course starred the late Bob Hoskins as Mario, John Leguizamo as Luigi, and the late Dennis Hopper as Bowser, I guess, if you want to call him that. It was of course that movie and the horrendous behind-the-scenes troubles that Nintendo said no to Hollywood for so long. If you don't know anything about the behind-the-scenes troubles of Super Mario Bros., I highly recommend you go look it up, because everything they went through and everything they went through before they started rolling cameras, I can't. But if that was done today, that movie would not exist. It wouldn't, because I don't know why. It's just read it. It's worth the read, especially how crazy it was. But the deal doesn't stop there, because back in 2015, again, this is a movie page and a movie podcast, but this shows you just how far back Nintendo and Illumination have been trying to work together. Back in 2015, Nintendo agreed to let Universal Parks and Resorts, which Meledandri, I think I pronounced his name two different times, probably mispronounced his name twice now. He's also the head of, not only is he the head of Illumination Entertainment, he's also the head of Universal Parks and Resorts. They struck a deal back in 2015 to build attractions on Nintendo characters like Mario and Luigi. So again, this deal has been going back for a while now. Everything is still in the early stages. So it will be a while before we even see a movie in theaters or any sort of footage. But with Mario being such a popular character, being more popular now than he ever was, probably because of Super Mario Odyssey. I'm pretty sure Illumination will be finding a writer and director pretty quickly to bring Mario to the big screen. So this is pretty big. And when it was reported back in November, I remember talking about this, and I think I said this, and I hope I said this. I'm not the biggest fan of this deal. Don't get me wrong, I want to see Mario back on the big screen, and it will probably work a hell of a lot better if it was an animated movie. My only gripe, I'm not going to say problem, my only gripe with this deal is that it's being done by Illumination. That's it. That's my only deal. I like the Despicable Me movies. I know Minions are a big thing. I thought Secret Life of Pets was okay. I thought Sing was okay. Their movies are just okay, and their animation style is, okay. Their animation style is good, but I probably would have rather Nintendo went with someone like Warner Brothers Animation, because I think they have a better animation style than Illumination. But that's just me. That's just me personally. But again, if the movie's good, it's all that matters. It's all that matters. So, more power to Illumination if they can pull this off. Alright. This is the big news item of the week. And I wasn't originally going to talk about this, but I got so angry just reading stuff like this that I decided to talk about it. And by the way, I'm recording this part in the morning, and my morning is ruined, so just letting you know. Because it's getting me angry, so I'm probably going to be angry for the rest of the day. There is a planned Black Panther sabotage. So, a Facebook group that was called, and I say was because the page has been taken down off Facebook. It was called Down with Disney's Treatment of Franchises and Its Fanboys. And they made an event called, I'm not kidding you, Give Black Panther a Rotten Audience Score on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, obviously, being the event name, the plan was to give Black Panther a negative review on the popular site. Similar to what apparently they did to Star Wars The Last Jedi, because they did that with that movie. I guess that was their first big quote-unquote attack. Now, the creator of the page and the event said this when the page was still up. Said, quote, given the massive success of audience review rigging on the Rotten Tomatoes site for Star Wars The Last Jedi, and due to the sudden rise in those disgruntled with Disney's Disney's business practices, among other factors, especially due to the corporate manipulation which created falsified bad press for the DCEU, I feel that it is time to strike back at all those under Disney and bring down the House of Mouse's actions for paying off the critics that hurt DC Comics on film and for the other parties affected by them. I'll be making these events for Infinity War and Netflix shows, etc., so we can rally together to truly make a difference, blah blah blah, some other bullshit and nonsense. By the way, I'm going to swear a lot for this news item. And apparently they're going to do one for Solo, a Star Wars story too. Of course, this got to Rotten Tomatoes. Obviously, something this massive and big would have to get over to Rotten Tomatoes. And Rotten Tomatoes responded saying, quote, we at Rotten Tomatoes are proud to have become a platform for passionate fans to debate and discuss entertainment, and we take that responsibility seriously. We will respect our fans' diverse opinions. We do not condone hate speech. I don't know why I messed it up. We do not condone hate speech. Our team of security, network, and social experts continue to closely monitor our platforms, and any users who engage in such activities will be blocked from our site and their comments removed as quickly as possible. That was the end quote of that. Ryan Coogler the director of Black Panther, got a hold of this, and he gave a very, modest answer. He's like, I'm just happy to get to finally have the fans watch the movie. That's pretty much the gist of what he said. Now, the Huffington Post sent a direct message to the group moderator after they took credit for The Last Jedi score. And he, assume he, because that's what the Huffington Post used, wrote back that he was upset with Star Wars producers for introducing more female characters to the franchise. And, quote, among other things, end quote. He also mentioned how The Last Jedi seems to disrespect the franchise's history. The outlet then added that the self-identified member of the alt-right group, yes, they identify themselves as a, quote, alt-right group. That is your first whatever you want to use. I can't even think of the word because I'm getting angry just reading this. And I wrote it. I wrote this little outline for myself, and I wrote that part. So, they said that Oscar Isaac's Poe Dameron was a victim of the anti-mansplaining movement, whatever the hell that is, and that Poe and Luke Skywalker are in danger of quote being turned gay, end quote, and that men should be reinstated as the rulers in society. I did not make that up. That is what they sent to the Huffington Post. So first of all, to the person or the people that created this group, and to anyone that supports this group and supports whatever movement, if that's the word you want to use, fuck you. Just fuck you. Second, if you don't like what a company is doing with a franchise or what they did with a movie or whatever, sabotaging their Rotten Tomatoes score is honestly one of the dumbest fucking things I can think of that you can do. You're not coming off as a hero or heroes or saviors or being cool. You're coming off as a whiny little bitch. And in this case of attacking Black Panther, yes, a racist. Say what you will about The Last Jedi and Solo and whatever, but then you target Black Panther. Now, I don't know when this group was created. I don't know if it was created because of The Last Jedi or it was created before that, but if it was created after The Last Jedi, then, I mean, it doesn't make it okay that they're targeting Black Panther the way they are. A superhero movie filled with black people, filled with entirely pretty much a black cast with the exception of Andy Serkis and Martin Freeman. But targeting Black Panther kind of comes off a little racist. But of course, that's not the thing that they're probably trying to do, or were trying to do. I don't know if they're still going to do it. Who knows? The important thing here for me, though, and hopefully for others, and I've seen others talk about this as well a little bit, you can't honestly call yourself a fan if you support this group in any sort of way. You can't. Because look at how long it took for nerd culture to finally become a real thing. That doesn't make you an outcast. Look how long it took for nerd culture to finally become pop culture. To finally be okay. I mean, there wasn't people out and about wearing, Superman or Batman or Deadpool shirts for a while. No, that took time, and that's a thing now. It's a common occurrence now in our world. Every time I walk out and go out of the house and, in public to a mall or a movie theater, there's people wearing nerdy shirts all the time. That was not the case 10, 15 years ago. I hate that I am now part of and I use the word hate, and I know hate's a strong word, but that is the word I want to use. I hate that I am part of a community that does stupid shit like this. I hate that nerds now target each other and make fun of each other and try to tear each other down for liking something that other nerds don't like. It's utterly mind-numbing that has become a thing. Why is that a thing? And yes, that's probably human nature, and that's how we're conditioned, and we see it everywhere, so whatever. But going to sabotage another movie, a nerd movie at that, because you think Disney pays off reviewers to shit all over DC movies? Are you fucking kidding me? You don't deserve to call yourself a fan, because I know I'm not calling you a fan. If you want to hate Marvel or dislike Marvel or dislike DC for whatever reason because you have a bias toward one over one brand over the other, that's fine. That is perfectly acceptable. If you grew up reading DC comics and you are a diehard DC fan, that's fine. And you don't like Marvel because of whatever, because their characters aren't as well thought of or well developed as DC characters, fine. That is a reasonable excuse. If you and it's the same thing goes for Marvel. If you think that DC characters aren't fully developed and whatever, that's fine. That is perfectly acceptable. But to say that you don't like the other brand, in this case being Marvel, since we're talking about Marvel in this case, because they get better reviews on a fucking website that doesn't have the best algorithm in the world, and at the end of the day doesn't really fucking justify whether a movie is good or not, is by far, again, one of the dumbest fucking things I can't believe we're talking about. Movie-wise, of course, because, we have Donald Trump as a president, he says stupid shit every other day or every day. And who the fuck cares if a movie gets a better score on Rotten Tomatoes? I don't. And neither should you. I don't know where this fascination came that Rotten Tomatoes is the be-all, end-all of our movie-watching experience. When did that become a thing? I want to know, because reviews, and yes, this is coming from a guy who writes reviews as a hobby, are opinions. That's all they are. Reviews are opinions. And you want to know whose opinion matters at the end of the day about a movie? Yours. And I'm going to be honest. And if you listen to this podcast enough, and you listen to, either whether you listen to all of them, or you listen to a few of them, or you only listen when there's big nerdy comic book news come out, the DC movies, I sometimes talk about DC. I trash DC quite a lot. Not because that's fun, not because I'm a Marvel fanboy, not because I prefer Marvel over DC. I do it because they do stupid things. And as for the DC movies, not all of them are great. Man of Steel, I liked it. I liked Man of Steel. I love Wonder Woman. But Suicide Squad, Batman v Superman, and Justice League, I'm sorry, those were not good movies. I didn't need a fucking website to tell me that. I saw them with my own two eyes. And if you like those movies, that's fine. You saw them, and you formed your own opinion, as you should. Now, I'll admit, when I saw Suicide Squad the second time, because I went to go see it one time, the Thursday night, and then I went to go see it, I think it was like during the week with my sister who wanted to go see it, so I went to go see it with her. I enjoyed it more the second time watching it. It was more enjoyable the second time watching it. Batman v Superman, not good. It wasn't. It was too long, it was too rushed, whatever. Justice League played it too safe. Now, do they deserve the low ratings they got? I don't know. I will say, though, that Justice League's score when it was released was a little lower than I would have personally given it. It was. I will admit that. But that said, it's not like all Marvel movies are getting scores in the high 90s or 100s. And I'll be the first one to admit, that not all the Marvel movies are perfect movies. They're not all great. I see the problems in them, so settle the fuck down. Because that's a dumb excuse, if that's what you're going off. Also, Marvel has had time to hone their craft, I guess you could say. They got down to these characters. They've given them all of their separate movies so we can care about them. And they didn't rush into their universe. They took their time with it. DC started filming Justice League right after Batman v Superman came out in theaters. They didn't even wait to see what the response was from the audience before they started filming Justice League. Now, I applaud DC and Warner Brothers. They've tried something different. They were like, you know what? No, we're not going to give all these people their movies. We're going to jump right into Justice League. And that's fine. I applaud that they did something different. I do, and I did. But they rushed things way too much. And look at where they are now. They're announcing movies left and right. They're pushing movies into development that probably don't need to be made. Do we need a solo Deadshot movie? I don't know. I don't think so. Do we need 3 Harley Quinn movies? Probably not. I would say I would lean more toward not. And there are some movies that are crumbling before us. The Flash was supposed to come out this year. It was probably supposed to come out last year. It was supposed to come out this year. It was supposed to come out next year. We barely got directors for a movie. Directors kept dropping out over creative differences. We don't know what the hell is going to happen with the Batman movie, and we still don't have a Man of Steel 2. If your problem with DC, the Marvel movies, and I guess the Star Wars movies at this point as well, if your problem is that they're getting better scores on Rotten Tomatoes or the DC movies, that's your personal problem. Because we shouldn't be getting to the point of sabotaging other movies. Forget the fact that it's a Marvel movie. Forget the fact that it's a superhero movie. You're sabotaging a movie that people spent their time perfecting, from the script stage to filming to spending their time in a dark small room for hours, days, and months editing it together so that people like us, fans, real fans, can have a good, great, awesome time in the theater. And it's not just Marvel, it's DC too. But you want to come along and ruin that for people because you have an issue with a fucking number on a website that ultimately, again, should not fucking matter whether you like a movie or not. How small of a person do you have to be? Because this isn't funny. This isn't smart. This isn't anything like that. This is dumb and petty. Who the fuck cares if DC movies get a lower score? Do you like them? Because that should be enough. And if people don't like them, then guess what? Forget it. Fuck them. To just say, you know what, I like this movie, and that's it. You shouldn't be sabotaging other movies. And for all you dumbasses out there, and yes, I will say dumbasses, I don't care if that's harsh, Warner Brothers, in case you didn't know, owns a minority stake in Rotten Tomatoes. So if you want to look at it in the twisted way you look at it, shouldn't Warner Brothers be paying reviewers to write better reviews for their DC movies? And maybe pay off a reviewer or a few reviewers and say, hey, we'll, nudge the Rotten Tomato guys to give you a primo spot at the top so you can have more clicks on your review. Or maybe, again, to look at it in your own little twisted way, maybe Warner Brothers is paying reviewers to write shitty reviews for their DC movies so that idiots like you can do stupid shit like this to go sabotage Marvel movies. Again, just trying to get in your headspace. If you don't like this, if you don't like the Marvel movies, don't watch them. And I know that's the typical response, and that's the response that everyone goes to, but guess what? That's the truth. You don't like the Marvel movies? Don't watch them. You just talk shit about them online, like everyone else does. I don't know where this sense of just, I can't even think of the word now because I've just gotten so angry. I don't know where these people, again, I'm not going to call them fans, get this idea that they can just take over and say, well, guess what? These characters are mine. And that's fine if you have that connection with that character, because obviously all of us connect with a different character than others. That's fine. You can have that. You can own that character all you want, but at the end of the day, that character is not yours. You did not create that character. Someone else did. And to do something like this, to sabotage a movie, forget the fact that it's a Marvel movie, forget the fact that it's a superhero movie, you're sabotaging a movie on a website. I've never been a fan of Rotten Tomatoes. I've said that multiple times in the podcast. I don't think their algorithm works, and I think it's just it's just a very quick way of getting a bunch of reviews on one site, and they put it through whatever algorithm they have, and pop comes out a number. Are they harsh on certain movies? Yes, they are. But that's not Rotten Tomatoes' fault, that's the reviewer's fault. You want to bitch at someone, and you want to whine at someone, and you want to sabotage a movie because a reviewer who has the opportunity to put the review on Rotten Tomatoes, that's it. That's all they do. They put the review on Rotten Tomatoes, and Rotten Tomatoes does the rest. That's what happens. You want to bitch at someone, you want to moan at someone, you want to sabotage someone, sabotage the reviewers. You don't like the reviewer, go on their Twitter. Write them an email. Tell them to fuck off. Don't sabotage a movie because you think that a website shows favoritism over one brand over the other. That's dumb. That's fucking dumb. And I will say this is not me being a Marvel fanboy. This is not me being all hail Marvel and all hail Disney. The Marvel movies are better. They are. Because they've had time to do them. They've had time to give us fans what they want. They don't rush. They're not reactionary like DC and Warner Brothers are to the box office and to what fans think online. Is DC doing something different than the Marvel movies? Yes, their movies are more grittier and their movies are more darker, and that's fine. Sure, they can have a little fun. Marvel movies are all about fun too. If you have a problem with that, like I said, don't watch it. Complain online like everyone else does. You want to start a petition? Go ahead and start a petition. Will it work? Who knows? I'm done. I'm done talking about this. I really am, because this is by far one of the most dumbest fucking things I've ever had to talk about in this podcast. I wasn't going to talk about this. I wasn't even going to I'm not going to put this on the Facebook page. I'm going to leave it here on the podcast. Because this is the dumbest fucking thing I've had to talk about in the 2 years that I've had this podcast up. And this is probably the angriest I've ever been on the podcast. Probably doesn't come out that way through the audio. But my cat has been watching my arms lately because I've been flinging them around recording this. I'm done. I'm done talking about this. So, by the way, like I mentioned, I'm recording this in the morning. And movie this week's releases was recorded at a different time. I recorded this podcast in different parts because I had time to record this podcast in different parts. So I recorded that part earlier in the week. So if I sound different and happy-go-lucky, it wasn't because I've stepped away from my microphone and walked around the block. It was because I just recorded at a different time. This is dumb. If you support this, you're an idiot. You are not a fan. You shouldn't consider yourself a fan. Because I like Marvel and DC. I like them both. And I can say that proudly and be okay with it. You should too. Alright, I'm done. I'm leave a random bumper here and see what I pick. That's the movie news for the week, guys.
You done messed up, Aaron!
Alright, let's move on to this week's releases.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
We got no real limited releases coming out this week, so let's move on to the wide releases, which only have one. And it's not rare to have a slow weekend this week at the beginning of February. It is Super Bowl weekend. Usually movie theaters don't like to compete against Super Bowl weekend. They sometimes do try to release a big movie, but for the most part, they kind of know people aren't going to come to the movie theater on Sunday, or if they do, we'll have something. But there's a lot of holdover this weekend, but we have one wide release coming out, which is Winchester. Eccentric firearm heiress believes she is haunted by the souls of people killed by the Winchester repeating rifle. That heiress is played by none other than Helen Mirren, which is really awesome to see. The movie also stars Jason Clarke, Sarah Snook, and Agus Sampson, who plays Tucker in the Insidious movies, by the way. I had my doubts about Winchester at the beginning. I did. I didn't know how the movie was going to work out, and they cast Helen Mirren, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go watch it now. And then they kept adding these, pretty great people. They had Jason Clarke, which I'm a huge fan of. Sarah Snook, who is making her way up the ladder in Hollywood, and they released the first trailer, and it was kind of creepy. And I thought, okay, I'll go watch that. So Winchester, obviously based off the Winchester house, which is a real house, and supposedly one of the most haunted houses in, I think, America or the world. I forget which one. So the thing is, the heiress, she believed that she was being haunted by all the spirits, again, people that were killed by the Winchester rifle. And what she did with the house was that she built the house to keep the spirits in. But as the spirits kept coming in, she kept adding levels and houses, or rooms, I should say, to the house. So, and in the trailer, you can kind of see that, she boards up the doors and everything I assume to keep the more evil spirits at bay. And that's kind of what it was, and she kept adding levels and levels, and there was people out there that thought that maybe she was just crazy or whatever, and it kind of seems like they're playing a little bit into the movie. Jason Clarke's character plays a doctor of some sort or a psychologist of some sort, and he is sent to the house to see if she is not crazy, or if she is crazy, to take away the fortune and the position of power that she has with the Winchesters. So it's I don't know how much they will play into that movie. It looks like they're playing just the horror aspect of it all, which is fine. It's fine. It's Helen Mirren. It's a Helen Mirren in a horror movie. I think that should be a selling point enough. So that is Winchester. I had my doubts again about the movie at the beginning, but I'm gonna go watch it. So it's a horror movie. I'm gonna go watch it. It's got Helen Mirren and Jason Clarke in it. Why am I not gonna go watch it? So that's it. That's all the wide releases for this week. There's only one wide release this week. Like I mentioned, it's usually kind of a slow weekend because of the Super Bowl. Sometimes that's not the case. This year it seems to be the case. So there is that. And of course, we got a lot of holdovers for you guys at the box office. You got Jumanji still out there. You got Maze Runner: The Death Cure out there that came out last week. You got you got The Post out there still. You got a lot of movies that were nominated for the Oscars. Those movies are back in theaters, like Get Out, Call Me by Your Name, Lady Bird, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. The Shape of Water is also back in theaters. I, Tonya, I think is still in some theaters. If you want to go check that out, I highly recommend you do. So you got a lot. If you don't want to watch Winchester, you got some holdovers and be like, I wanted to watch that movie. You got Paddington 2 out in theaters as well. If there's a lot of movies out there. You're like, man, I don't want to. I don't know. I haven't watched that movie. I haven't had time. Now you got time if you don't want to watch Winchester, or maybe you want to save your money for whatever. So that's fine. But that's your wide release of the week. I'm so used to saying those are your wide releases or limited releases for the week. Not this week. You only got one. So that's it, guys. That's it for the podcast this week. Thank you guys so much for that. Of course, we have some movie news items up on the Facebook page that we didn't get to talk about this week. If you want to go check that out, I highly recommend you go do. It's the Facebook page, facebook.com/moviepit. That's facebook.com/moviepit. There is a link down below in the description/show notes area that we click on it. It will take you right there. You guys can go check it out and just hit that like button. Really appreciate it if you go hit that like button. Pretty much get an early preview of what we're going to talk about on the show. I go more into detail and more into my personal thoughts on the podcast than I do on the page, but that's just me. So you get an early preview, and again, you'll get stuff that we don't talk about on the podcast up there. So go check that out. And while you're down there, go check out all the other links. There's the WordPress account down there where I do written, non-spoiler reviews of the movies that I watch. So you guys can go check those out. The Twitter page, the handle for the Twitter page for the podcast is up there, which is Movie Pit Podcast. That's Movie Pit Podcast. But there's the handle down there. Handles to my personal Twitter and Instagram are down there as well. And a bunch of other stuff. Again, the links to the trailers are down there for this week. Besides Ant-Man, the Wasp, Hereditary, and Unsane, I think there's another trailer down there. There's another trailer down there for Submergence, which is a new movie with James McAvoy and Alicia Vikander, and some other trailer down there as well. And so thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Go check out everything down below in the descriptions/show notes area. If you're listening to this on YouTube, show me some love. If you're listening to this on SoundCloud, show me some love. If you're listening to this on iTunes, hello, welcome iTunes listener. And if you're listening on SoundCloud or YouTube, and you're like, you know what, I want to go listen on iTunes. I want to take this podcast on the road with me. You can. All you gotta do is go to iTunes. There's a link down below in the description/show notes area. I'm talking too fast. Go check that out. Go click on it, and it will take you right there. All you gotta do is hit subscribe, and every week when the podcast comes out, it will be right there for your listening pleasures. So go check that out. So click on the subscribe button. Leave me a rating and review. Please leave me a rating and review. It will really help out the podcast. It will really help me out in the long run. It will help the podcast branch out and get to more people, and it will turn this podcast into what I want it to be, which is a place where movie lovers can come and talk about movies. So I really appreciate that. And if you leave a rating and review, I'll give you a shout out on the podcast. So hey, you do me a favor, I do you a favor. That's how it works out. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week. Have a safe, fun, hopefully you have a safe and fun week so far, but have a better, safe, and fun weekend this weekend. And this weekend? I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Have a safe, fun weekend. Thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!